Friends, I welcome you all to our today's session. We are going to learn the concept of registration under GST. First, we will be learning the legal provisions. It is relatively the concept. We may take maybe 2-3 classes to cover the entire concept to understand the entire legal provisions. After that, we will be learning the practical aspects, how one should go for the registration. So I am sharing the screen with you, and one by one the related sections and rules will be discussing. First, let me share with you that what is the expectation, what is the learning outcome of this particular concept that we are going to learn, that is registration concept. So we'll be understanding the concept of taxable person. But this concept, who is a taxable person, we had already discussed earlier. So I think you are aware of that. And we'll be also explaining you the when a person is liable to get registered under GST law. So that will be learning the requirement of registration. What is the situation when he is supposed to get himself registered under GST? Then we'll be explaining you scenarios where registration is compulsory. Then identifying the persons who are not liable for registration. That concept also will be learning. I'll be also describing the procedure for obtaining registration under GST. And once registration is obtained, how to amend on it. Let us say you have registered for a particular trade. Now you want to amend it. One more trade needs to be added. Or your registered address was something, you want to add one more address, or you want to change the address, how that will happen. And if required, how the registration can be cancelled and how it can be revoked. So all this concept we'll be learning in this series of classes. So this particular chapter, the registration chapter, if you let us have an overview of that, we'll be understanding persons liable to registration, compulsory registration, persons not liable for registration, what is the procedure for registration, amendment of registration, cancellation of registration, revocation of registration. So these are the processes, and we'll be learning, and we'll also be learning the legal provisions behind that. Okay, I think now you got a fair idea, a fair overview that what are the things that we are going to learn. First of all, what you are seeing now, this is a registration certificate. Of course, I had shown you earlier. You have earlier also seen registration certificate under GST law. Okay, you know it, and if you see it, you can from here you can understand what is the GST registration number or GSTIN. Okay, GST identification number. Now, can you tell me what is the GSTIN in this certificate? Can you identify and tell?
The registration number written over there.
Yeah, tell me. Please read it out.
Sir, 21 AAN FB 13 73 L IZH.
Oh, that is L1ZH. Okay, so this is the registration. Okay. And you earlier classes also had explained you know that 21 shows what?
That is state code, sir.
Sure. That is state code. Okay, so and you know GST registration is a PAN based number. That concept also we have discussed. So if you see there is a linkage between the PAN and the GSTIN. Is it not? So you see PAN is already embedded in the GST registration number. This person, you see after state code, if you find out this is the PAN number. It's the PAN. Okay, this is how GST registration certificate looks like, and we'll be learning what is the process of obtaining this certificate, and we'll be learning the legal provisions relating to registration. Okay, so this certificate normally have an annexure which gives some other details, right? You see, one can find out what is the place of business and the additional place of business. One can business addresses, one can find out here. And one can also find out the details. Suppose it's a registration of our partners, then who are the partners of the firm, then one can also see. Okay, so this kind of processes are followed. This is how GST, these are the content of GST registration. Now let us learn what is the requirement, why at all this registration is required. First of all, friends, try to understand. Under any taxation law, registration is the fundamental requirement, because through that process, through that registration number, the department or the government will identify the taxpayer. So for identification of the taxpayers and for ensuring that the tax is properly complied in an economy, registration is required. Under income tax law, you got a PAN, is it not? So through that PAN, income tax department recognizes you. Income tax department tries to find out whether you have paid your tax liability or not. Whether complying with the provisions or not, one can easily find it out. Therefore, registration is required. Similarly, under GST law also, to ensure that a particular taxable person has discharged his tax liability, the registration is required. And this is the first step towards becoming GST compliant. If it is required or if it is compulsory to get yourself registered, you have to get yourself registered. Otherwise, it will become a non-compliance. Right? And whenever you are purchasing something from the market or you are availing some services, you must be saying you are getting a bill or invoice. And some bills you must have noticed that there is a that means the supplier has collected some amount of GST from. So nobody can collect that GST unless that person is registered under GST law. Okay. So any bill, any invoice, wherever you are finding GST is collected, ensure and please check that in the bill itself, that supplier's GST registration must have been printed. If it is not there, he is not a registered person and he has got no right to collect GST from you. Right? Understood? So without being registered under GST law, no one can collect GST. No one can, and no one also claims credit of GST. Right? Claim credit of GST means ITC. Right? Input tax credit. Input tax credit one can claim only when he is a registered person. He has registered himself under GST. So the process of registration, in fact, legally recognizes a person as a supplier of goods or services or both. It legally authorizes a person to collect tax from its customers and also to pass credit of the taxes paid on the goods and services supplied to the purchaser or the recipient. So anybody who is purchasing from a supplier, he can avail the credit. So credit can be passed. But all these things are possible only when the person is registered. Hope you have understood this basic concept. Coming to advantages of this GST registration process. First advantage is that a supplier can claim input tax credit. Right. So this is the first advantage you can see. If a person is purchasing something or using some input, maybe input of goods or maybe input of services, and when taking that input and receiving that input, if he has paid some GST, he can take input tax credit. Right. Suppose a trader is purchasing something and selling something. When he is purchasing, he is paying GST. That input tax credit he can avail and utilize the same for discharging his GST liability. All these things is possible only when he is a registered person. Okay. So a registered supplier can claim the input tax credit of taxes paid and can utilize the same for payment of taxes due on supply of goods or services. And this registration ensures seamless flow of input tax credit. So one person's input tax credit gets adjusted in another person's output tax, or the same person's output tax. Then that also becomes input tax credit for some other person. So like this, the input tax credit gets utilized. And finally, the tax is borne by the ultimate person, ultimate consumer. Okay. Are you getting me? These points are clear to you? Hope we have understood what the advantage. Now, friends, next concept which you need to appreciate is the state-wise registration. Friends, please appreciate that under GST law, a supplier is required to obtain state-wise registration. That means he has to register in a state. There is no concept of centralized registration under GST. Okay, you might be doing business pan-India, but you have to get yourself registered in a state. A supplier has to obtain registration in every state or in every union territory from where he makes taxable supplies, provided his aggregate turnover exceeds a specified threshold limit. Meaning, the law has specified that if your aggregate turnover is within a specified limit, then you need not get yourself registered. But in case your turnover exceeds that specified threshold limit, then you have to get yourself registered. Okay, so one need to understand what is this aggregate turnover, how to compute that thing. And again, if the aggregate turnover means you have to see that what is the taxable supply. So these concepts we need to understand. That state-wise, what is the taxable supply, what is the aggregate turnover, all these things. Then only one can decide whether registration is required or not. Okay, this also means that registration is not required, or one person need not obtain registration from a state or union territory where he does not make, or from where he makes non-taxable supplies. Okay, I repeat, if someone is making non-taxable supply from a state or union territory, then he need not obtain registration from that state or union territory, even if his aggregate turnover exceeds the specified. So friends, now what is required that we need to understand? What is this taxable supply? What is this aggregate turnover? And also what is the specified limit? This varies from state to state. That also will be done. And we have also understood this concept that registration is not required if non-taxable supplies are made. Hope you have understood after this.
Sir, can you just repeat the second point again?
Second point means this one. What I see.
Oh, it was that one. Like a supplier has to obtain registration in every state from where he makes taxable supply. That one.
Okay, let me repeat the entire concept once again. I'll be elaborating this thing in the next slide also. First, what I told you. Point number one, you have to understand that state-wise registration is required. Okay, there is nothing called a central registration. So state-wise registration is required. That means a person has to obtain registration in every state or in every union territory from where he makes taxable supply. Meaning, if he's making a non-taxable supply, then the question of registration doesn't arise. But he is making taxable supply, then registration is required in respect of every state. Okay, when I say every state, how that will be handled will be learned. Okay, maybe I'll be elaborating in the next slide itself. That every state registration is required. Okay, there is one more possibility is that one can show a particular place as the principal place of business, other places maybe additional place of business. We'll be learning that concept. But now what we have learned is that registration is required in respect of every state, provided the taxable supply is there. And one more thing, the taxable supply only when it exceeds the threshold limit, then only registration is required. Okay, and we need to arrive at what is the aggregate turnover. If the aggregate turnover of taxable supply exceeds the specified limit, then all registration is required. If someone is making non-taxable supply, even if that aggregate turnover exceeds the specified limit, still registration is not required. Did you understand these basic things?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now I'll be adding little complexity to that. Just a minute. You know, registration is PAN-based. And I told you, once the supplier is liable for registration, he has to obtain registration in each state or union territory in which he operates under the same PAN. If PAN is different, then person is different. Okay. But if one PAN is there, that means it's one person. He might be operating in different state by using the same PAN. Okay. So he is normally required to obtain registration, obtain a single registration in a state and union territory. But however, if he is having multiple places of business in state and union territory, then he has option. Now understand, this is the complexity I wanted to add. Either he can get a single registration of the said state or union territory, where it can declare one place as the principal place of business and the other places are additional places of business. Or he can get separate registration in respect of each place of business in such state or union territory. Did you understand? So in a state, he is normally required to obtain single registration. Okay. In a state, he is normally required to obtain single registration. But if he has multiple places of business in a state or union territory, let us say you have multiple places of business in a state. Let us say you are doing business in the state of Odisha, but you have multiple places of business. You are operating, your place of business is there at Cuttack, place of business is there at Bhubaneswar, place of business is there at Rourkela. Then what option you have? Option 1, get a single registration of the said state. One registration you obtain. Where what you can do? You can show one place as your principal place of business, which is called as a PPOB, principal place of business. And other branches of additional places of business, APOB. Okay, PPOB and APOB. In this case, if you follow this model, then what will happen? You can manage with single registration of the state. Did you understand?
So if a person is doing like in different places, like a person is doing open his business, but he is selling a product of like producing or doing something product of different aspect, then is it possible to come under one business or like different?
Yes. Additional trades you can add in one GST registration. When you will be learning the GST registration process, you can also understand at that point of time that how to include multiple trades in one GST registration. That was your query, that you are saying that whether I can do multiple businesses with one GST registration.
Yeah, so like if the same business, how can like sorry, if there is different business, how can it come under like one particular registration?
Answer is yes, it can come. Okay, how to get it done? That will be learned. Okay, how to get it done at the time of registration, when you'll go for the registration process. So you'll be learning that anyway. At that time, you'll be saying there is an option that you can add various types of businesses that you want to do. So one can add it subsequently also. Okay, subsequently also means maybe you have initial registration, you have obtained a particular place of business. Sorry, a particular type of business. Okay, now you want to add one more type, then you can add it. Suppose initially your registration was for doing trading business. Okay, now you want to provide some kind of services, you can add it. This was your query.
Yes, sir.
But right now, what we are talking about is something different. What we are talking about, let us say you are having multiple places of business in one state. One state you have different places. Now you got two options. You can show one place of business as a principal place of business, PPOB, and other places will be treated as what?
Additional.
Additional places of business. That is one way you can do. Or what else you can do? Can you tell me? Obtain separate registration for each place of business. For each place of business, obtain a separate registration. Are you getting me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, once again, I am showing you the slide. Now, read it carefully. If he is having multiple places of business, normally one can go for single registration, but he is having multiple places of business in a state or in a union territory. He has option either to get single registration or get separate registration for each place of business in such state or union territory. Okay. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Now, one more thing you have to understand, that for all kind of GSTs, you already know there are various kinds of GST, means CGST, SGST, UTGST, IGST, and for all possible kind of GST, there is single registration. So registration is not GST specific. Okay, so there is a single registration for all kind of taxes, GST, SGST, GST, IGST, and GST compensation cess for everything single registration. And to understand completely about the provisions of registration, we have to learn chapter 6 of CGST Act, where we'll be learning section 22 to section 30. Various provisions of registration we'll be learning. Now, chapter 3 of GST rules, that is registration rules, rule 8 to rule 26 of CGST rules we'll be learning. Then certain provisions relating to registrations will be covered there. Then state GST laws also provide identical provisions. Friends, we will be learning this central act and central rules. But if you look at your state GST provisions, you will find identical provisions. Okay, the provisions of registration under CGST Act have been applicable to IGST Act. So if you cover the CGST Act and CGST book, so broadly we'll be able to understand all the relevant provisions of registration. Okay. Now, friends, and to learn that provisions, first of all, we need to familiarize ourselves with certain definitions. Some of the definitions I've already explained you in our initial classes, but some we still need to learn. For example, the definition of agent, we have covered it earlier. Agent means factor, broker, commission agent, RPR, delegator agent, and auctioneer. All of them are agents. Who is RPR? Who is a delegator agent? This has been already taught to you in initial classes. I am not going to repeat it. Okay, if you want to learn once again, you can refer to the recorded video which is available. Agent definition. Now, these are the few new definitions we want to know. First is, what is the meaning of common portal? Many times law uses this term, common portal. Common portal means common goods and services tax electronic portal, which is referred in section 146. So friends, understand, many times I had taken you earlier also to that website www.gst.gov.in, right? Yes or no? Many times I had shown you earlier how to enter into that by using your user ID, password, and how to see the status of various returns and how to pay tax. All these things we have seen earlier or not? That is the common code. Okay, friends. Okay, what you have already seen earlier, that is the common code. Or you want to see it once again? I'll be showing you an appropriate time. When you will learn the registration process, I'll begin showing that. Now, common portal you have understood. What is taxable supply? This you know already. Means supply of goods and services are both which is leviable to tax under this act. That is called taxable. Taxable territory means territory to which provisions of this act applies. This is the meaning of taxable territory. These terms are important. Few more terms are also important for us. What is place of business? Now, this also, because registration is very closely related to the concept of place of business, we need to understand this concept. Section 2, clause 85 defines that. As you can see it here, place of business includes, broadly you can see there are three aspects to this definition, or three components you can see. What is place of business? A place from where business is ordinarily carried on. That is my place of business, where I am ordinarily carrying on my business. And includes a warehouse, a godown, or any other place where taxable person stores his goods, supplies or receives goods or services. That means this part of the definition talks about where a businessman is ordinarily carrying on his activities. That place can be referred to as the place of business. Okay, where the business is ordinarily carried on. And this place includes stores, warehouses, godowns, and other places where supplies are made, goods are received, services are provided. This is the place of business. I think this part is okay. You can easily identify that a person where from his business is ordinarily carried out. Then one more thing, or a place where the taxable person maintains his books of account. So when the place where books of accounts are maintained, that also plays an important role here. Place of business also includes that. Or a place where taxable person is engaged in business through an agent. Agent definition we have already come. If the taxable person is engaged in a business through an agent, and its agent is operating from a different place, that means business is carried on from that place through an agent. That place is also place of business. Did you understand this thing? Now, if you look at this definition, what is place of business? And you already know, if you look at the registration certificate, we can have principal place of business or additional place of business. The place of business includes all these three things. Where business is ordinarily carried out, including stores, supplies, receivables, or stores or places where supplies, receipts, goods are received or services are provided, where books of accounts are maintained, where business is carried out through an agent. This is the meaning of place of business. Now, few other related definitions are also relevant. We'll understand what is the meaning of appellate authority. Appellate authority means an authority appointed or authorized to hear the appeals. So if you have some problems, some issues are there, and you are not satisfied with the order which are raised by an GST authority, then you can appeal against it. The authority who is going to hear that appeal is referred to as appellate authority. Okay, that concept we will be learning in due time. The concept of appeal. Now, what is the meaning of fixed establishment? That is also relevant. Fixed establishment means other than the registered place of business. Okay. First, we will exclude this part. Other than the registered place of business. What is fixed establishment? Fixed establishment means a place which is characterized by sufficient degree of permanence and suitable structure in terms of human and technical resources to supply services or to receive and use services for its own need. Okay, this is the meaning of fixed establishment. There should be some kind of permanent structure or some kind of suitable structure in terms of human people should be there, technical resources should be there. If that kind of place is there, that can be referred to as fixed establishment. And what is principal place of business? Means the place of business specified as principal place of business in the certificate of registration. If you look at the GST certificate, you can find out what is the principal place of business. When you go for the registration process, at that time also, you have to mention that what is principal place of business and what is additional place of business. You will be mentioning this. Okay. The meaning of proper officer, let us understand. In relation to any function performed under this Act, it means the commissioner or officer of the central tax who is assigned that function by the commissioner. Right? If commissioner is assigning some officer, then he is the proper officer, or commissioner himself is the proper officer. So now next relevant term is registered person. This means a person who is registered under section 25, but does not include a person having UIN. UIN means unique identity number. Very quickly, I'm explaining what is the UIN. Okay, have you heard of this? UIN. So registered person means who is registered under GST law, but does not include a person having UIN. UIN definition will become shortly at that time. Now, next concept is the tax period. Tax period means period for which return is required to be furnished. If it is a monthly return, then tax period is the month. A quarterly return, the tax period may be the quarter. So like this, the tax period means the period for which return is required to be furnished. Now, UIN, I was telling you, I'll be explaining this concept, what is UIN. Let us quickly know that. Unique identification number. UIN is a special class of GST registration for whom? For foreign diplomatic missions and embassies. They go for this kind of registration. Okay. And which are not liable to taxes in Indian territory. So in India, they're not supposed to pay taxes, but they need to get themselves registered. So any amount of tax, whether direct or indirect, collected from such bodies is refunded back to them. Who are these people? Foreign diplomatic missions and embassies. Okay, but they have to apply for this UIN. So who can apply for this UIN? Number one, a specialized agency of United Nations organization. If some agency of UNO is there, then United Nations organization, they can apply for this UIN registration. Or a multilateral finance institution or organization notified under United Nations. The United Nations Privileges and Immunity Act 1947. So those kind of organizations also can apply for a UIN. Consequently, they don't have to pay any GST. Then consulate or embassy of foreign countries, they can also apply for that. Any other person or class of persons as notified by the commissioner. So commissioner may also notify that these are the people who need to obtain UIN. Okay. And when I say registered person excludes this UIN number holders. So if you see the definition, it means registered under section 25, but does not include a person having UIN. Next talk, which is important for us, is the business. Business we have discussed thoroughly earlier, inclusive definition. So quickly you can have a look at this definition. It includes trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, adventure, wager or similar activity. Okay, activities incidental or ancillary to that clause. Okay, whether it is carried out continuously or not. Supply or acquisition of goods, including capital goods. So all these activities are in fact businesses. It includes provisions by club, association, society, or body, certain facilities to its members. admission for a constitution, services supplied by a person as the holder of an office, which has been accepted by him in the course of furtherance of his trade professional vocation, services provided by race club, totalizer license, any activity or transaction undertaken by central government, state government, local authority, in which they are engaged as public authorities. Friends, this is the meaning of business, which you had, since you have already discussed it earlier in some other sessions. So I'm not going to repeat that thing. But you need to go through it, you need to have a complete idea about the term business. Okay. The meaning of appointment date is that date on which the provisions of the act shall come into force. That's the meaning of appointment. Now, friends, we have covered some of the important definitions which are relevant for understanding the concept. We'll be elaborating the concept of taxable person now. Right? So, taxable person we'll be learning. For that thing, first, let me take you to section 2, clause 107, which talks about the concept of taxable person. And you know, taxable persons are liable for registration. First, we'll see who are these taxable persons. Means a person who is registered or liable to be registered under section 22 or section 24. These are two different sections which are relevant for us. Okay, what is section 22? What is section 24? We'll be learning. Okay, at this stage, just to give you a broad idea, just have a look. Section 22 talks about persons who are liable for registration. Section 22 means section 22 of CGST Act. Section 24 is about compulsory registration. Right. So, in certain cases, so both the sections will be learning. So, who is a taxable person? Means a person who is either registered or liable to be registered. That means if he is registered, then fine, he is a taxable person. Now, even if he is not registered, but he is liable to be registered under section 22 or section 20. Section 24 says certain situation, or is specified certain situation where registration is required. Section 24 also says some situations where mandatory registration should be there, compulsory registration. Okay, so taxable person means both the things. Either you are registered or you are liable to be registered. That means if in an unregistered person who is liable to be registered is also a taxable person. True, he has not registered himself, but he is liable to be registered under section 22 or under section 20. Therefore, he is still a taxable person. Okay, one thing. And at the same time, even if a person is not liable to be registered, but he has taken voluntary registration. Voluntary registration is open. Even if you are not liable to be registered, if you want, you can get yourself registered. That is voluntary registration. So a person who is not liable to be registered, but has voluntarily taken registration and got himself registered, he is also a taxable person. Is this concept clear to you? What is the meaning of taxable person? Number 8, he is registered. Registered means either voluntary registration or he is required to be registered and he is registered. Okay. Second thing is that he is liable to be registered, but he has not yet registered, but still he is a taxable person. Are you getting me? This is the meaning of taxable person. Now, in order to learn the registration process, these are the certain, this is the, you can say, list of sections which describes various provisions relating to registration. Section 22 of CGST Act explains the persons liable for registration. Section 23, persons not liable for registration. 24, compulsory registration in certain cases. Section 25 exactly describes the procedures for registration Section 26 is about deemed registration. 27, special provisions relating to casual taxable persons and non-resident taxable persons. Who are they? We'll be learning. Section 28 is about amendment of registration. 29 talks about cancellation or surrender of registration. And section 30 talks about revocation or cancellation of registration. Now, our plan is to cover all these sections to the extent possible. Some sections are more important for us. We'll go deep into that. And some sections we may go at a surface level. Okay, so these are the relevant sections. You can have a look at this. Now we'll be understanding who are the persons liable for registration. As you can see the list, persons liable for registration is described in section 22. Okay, who are the person liable for registration? Okay, so there are certain subsections. We'll be understanding each one of them. Subsection 1, subsection 2, subsection 3, different situations, subsection 4. Okay, and there are some explanations to it. Then we'll be learning about this thing, new registration limits. What is the turnover limit for obtaining registration? Okay, so what is the concept of aggregate turnover? We'll be learning. Then once we learn the section, we'll try to analyze the subsets of the section. So that is our plan for our next session. So next session, we'll be starting with person liable for registration. Okay. Do you have any query of this? Any doubt you have? Yes or no? Hopefully you don't have any doubt. Thank you very much.